Hello everybody, welcome to The World This Week. On this program, In Between Years, we'll talk about 2014 and we'll look ahead to 2015. 2015 will be the preview of 2016 in terms of American presidential politics. As soon as potential candidates such as Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton announce their candidacy, we'll see the campaign moving into high gear. Joining us from New York now is I-24 News political correspondent Tal Shalev. And, well, it is pretty quiet this holiday season, Tal, but we'll hear the starting gun, I guess, pretty soon.
Well, officially, the presidential primary campaign will be starting in just a year from now, in January 2016. But the upcoming year will definitely be defined by the rumors and speculations about the candidates. And first of all, everyone is waiting to see and anticipating to see when Hillary Clinton will announce her candidacy. Other candidates are expected to announce their candidacy by the summer. So we won't see any gunshots immediately, but rather preparations gearing up probably towards March or April after the new Congress convenes. And that is actually the first political battlefield of 2015. The new Congress, that is where we will be seeing gunshot and knives uncovered, and that will be the president's first political challenge for this year.
What's on President Obama's agenda after Cuba and North Korea?
As we said, Congress is number one on the president's agenda at this moment. The president and the American public are waiting to see who the Congress will elect for their top posts. And the first test for that will be the Iranian issue. There is a new sanctions bill pending and also a lot of moves to increase congressional supervision of nuclear negotiations aimed at making the president's Harfa much more difficult to accomplish. And in any case, many of the foreign policy challenges of 2014 will continue to accompany Obama into 2015, just to name a few of them. The battle against ISIS, the Ukraine crisis, and most recently the declining oil prices and their impact on the international arena.
And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, any signs whatsoever that the Obama administration will ever try again?
Well, it seems like the current modus vivendi in the administration regarding the Middle East peace process is to postpone everything until after the Israeli elections in March. That is what we're seeing currently in the UN regarding the Palestinian statehood bids. The U.S. is pushing to postpone everything until after the elections. And it seems like the White House is waiting to see how the Israeli public cast their ballot, and will Benjamin Netanyahu be again elected prime minister, and only then decide on how much involved it intends to be in its last 2 years in the Middle East peace process, and how much of this headache does Obama and his administration really want for its last 2 years. Thank
you very much, Tal Shalev, I-24 News correspondent in New York.
Goodbye, Jacob. Happy New Year.
With us now is Dr. Bawa Jain, who is the Secretary General of the World Council of Religious Leaders. This is a United Nations initiative. Dr. Jain is here in Israel on a visit. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Well, Dr. Jain, I guess you are in the most failing business of this century, namely bringing religions of the world together. Would you disagree?
No, I totally agree with you. We do something because there's a need for it. If everything was okay, then there was no need for what we are doing. You know, the very reason that we have challenges and problems is the inspiration why we do this work.
Now, with the escalation of Islamic terrorism, the surge of anti-Semitism, do you see any dialogue at all?
The problem is not with religion itself. The problem is oftentimes, as the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan said, the problem is oftentimes with the, not with the faith, but the people who follow the faith. It's the people who are misleading or misinterpreting in the name of religion and creating these conflicts, especially when you call Islamic terrorism. To me, that's an oxymoron, because the problem is not with Islam itself. The problem is with the people who are misusing Islam to perpetuate their viewpoints and their differences. And, you know, unfortunately, I would like to see more covered in the media, and I don't, on the primary Muslim leaders of the world when they speak out against ISIS and the Islamic terrorism. I don't see that covered. For instance, I know that the ulama in Saudi Arabia, which is the highest body in the Sunni world, they met, they condemn ISIS. How much have you seen in the media? The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, he declared that this is not Islam. We don't see that in the media. So do we blame the religious leaders for not speaking out? Or who do we fault for that message not getting out there?
But their voice is not heard also by their own people, you know, when religions are being hijacked by those extremists.
I'm so glad you used the word hijack. That's precisely what is happening. Religions are being hijacked. Hijacked by whom, if you analyze? I think what needs to emerge, what the World Council of Religious Leaders is attempting to do is we are engaged in religious diplomacy, almost like a track 5 to the political process. Here, what we are trying to do is bringing political leaders, religious leaders, and the civil society, business leaders together. And I think that's what is the missing dimension, is we are not seeing enough of those leaders at the highest level coming together and seeing what are the challenges and problems and what they can do to support each other in those efforts.
Wouldn't you agree that the world is now in the middle of a religious war?
Unfortunately, again, it's not a religious war, but religion oftentimes gets drawn in. Why? Because 90% of the world's population follows one religion or the other. This is a huge force, and it's easy to manipulate people in the name of religion. That's why I'm saying the people who know more about religions than the common people, they need to come together with the political leaders, and they need to make a broader understanding. Take here in the context of the Middle East, between Israel and Palestine, right? With all the conflicts that is going on, the world's oldest conflict, the gravest conflict, it has impact on everything literally around the world. The problem is here that you have the highest level of religious leaders, but how much are they being allowed to or brought into working with the political system? This is the Holy Land. How can you have a solution here without the active engagement of the senior religious leaders across the spectrum, across the religions? I would love to see more of that. This is why I remember just before the Millennium Summit at the United Nations, when Camp David had taken place, I was questioned by some journalists in New York that why are you doing the Millennium Summit? The conflict is over. They signed a peace accord. And I said at that time, I said, I wish I'm wrong, but I said, I don't think this accord will sustain. They said, why? I said, you bring the political leaders, you force them to have this declaration, but you have not built the broad public opinion. The people who can most influence public opinion and know the religious sensitivities are the religious leaders. Sometimes they are the cause of conflict also. And unfortunately, that is why we have the situation. So it's important to engage the religious leaders, bring them together, let them be part of the process to buy into the solutions that are being negotiated, and let them go out and build public opinion.
Well, we'll try to think positively. Dr. Jain, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, let's talk sports with Jim Williams, a 7-time Emmy Award-winning television sports producer, director, and writer. Thank you very much for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
Jim, let's start by looking at 2014. We had both the World Cup and the Winter Olympics, both a success?
Absolutely. I think that we had two situations. In the Winter Olympics, as often is the case, you have a situation where sometimes the political atmosphere overshadows the sporting event. As we got ready, approximately this time last year, as you recall, there were a number of countries that were somewhat concerned about going to Russia at all because of the political situation and the possibility of the security issues. So that kind of led into the start, if you will, of the Winter Games. And then once we got to Sochi, everything seemed to move very well, actually. And so what in essence happened was Vladimir Putin got what he wanted in a desired result, which was the stage he wanted to show that Russia could indeed host the games, and not only host them, but host them in a way that kept all the athletes secure and there was no incidents. Then moving to your next point having to do with World Cup, I think everyone was somewhat surprised at the ineffectiveness of Brazil, the host country. Brazil kind of laid an egg, if you will. and didn't perform as well as they normally do in World Cup on their own home soil. And I think that's kind of a takeaway from there. Other than that, by the way, I think that this is one of the most entertaining World Cups we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah. How popular is soccer now in the United States comparing to 4 or 5 years ago?
This past World Cup, we had the highest rated audiences that we've ever had. The games were watched, and not just when the United States was playing, but throughout Germany and Italy and a number of different countries drew very well. And the rationale, I think, behind that is that Americans do enjoy soccer. They do. The problem is they're not real crazy about the Major League Soccer in the United States because it's not played at the highest level. But because of the ratings of the English Premier League and a number of other leagues, La Liga and some of the other top leagues from Europe that we get to see, Bundesliga in Germany, what's happening is that the Americans are becoming far more sophisticated about the sport, and hopefully, as did happen with the following of the national team in the last World Cup in Brazil this past summer, it was a wonderful, as I said before, next maturing level.
Yeah, but still the United States is not a world player. Do you foresee the U.S. as a major player anytime in the future in the soccer world?
What we're seeing here is a number of young players who are foregoing football, United States football, because of all the concussions and all the other injury situations that have come with it. So what are we seeing? We're seeing now an entirely new group of wonderful, talented young players that are coming into the fold. So I do believe within the next decade, we will see a much more competitive United States team, and a team that could, someday challenge for a World Cup. So I do believe it's there. So give us a decade, we'll be there.
2014 had its share of scandals, especially in the NFL. What happened?
When Ray Rice was caught on tape, on the TMZ tape, the first one, not the second one, the first one where he was basically dragging his fiancée, Janae Ramsey at the time, out of the elevator, it shocked everyone in the country. Of course, Ray was taken and tried and basically moved through the justice system. Then what happened was the second video came out. The second video was, of course, where the infamous punch was given. That punch set shockwaves through the country and obviously through the National Football League and subsequently, obviously, the Baltimore Ravens. With regard to the Ravens, they then decided to terminate Ray Rice's contract. The National Football League decided to suspend him indefinitely. They went to arbitration and a judge ruled, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You can't, he was penalized once, you can't penalize him again. So what I think the uptake here, and the most important takeaway, is this, that across the board, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, soccer, any type of sport, you need to understand that it all begins in grade school, in high school. It's kind of a bully mentality. You want to get that bravado totally out of it and begin to sensitize people to the fact that a number of these athletes have been coddled ever since they were young because they are talented at what they do. And under those circumstances, it becomes a major, major issue.
Yeah. Well, finally, the NBA and LeBron James and Cleveland, what's your prediction for this season?
Well, I think that Coach Blatt has an incredibly talented team. And right now, if the season were to be stopped right this moment, they would be in the number 4 or number 5 slot in the playoffs, and there are 8 playoff slots in each, the Eastern and the Western Conference. Having seen Coach Blatt and the Cavaliers practice, I can honestly tell you that it's a work in process. I think that by the time we reach April and the playoffs begin, that we're going to see a very talented, very well-focused, and very gifted Cleveland team. If you're a fan of Coach Blatt and you're a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think the most important thing right now is patience. At this juncture, it's not there yet, but we have almost 4 months before we have to concern ourselves with it. And I do believe that both Chicago and Cleveland will battle it out in the Central. And with a little bit of luck, I think Coach B's team will be very, very well positioned once the playoffs come around. And right now, it's a work in process.
Yeah. Jim Williams, I thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure.
And this has been another edition of The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.